Thanks everybody for joining us today. We got a really special guest. I'm so pleased to have her on my show. We got the lovely one and only Dr. Carrie Grant. Thanks, Carrie, for
I am
joining us.
so pleased to be here. Thank you, Kevin, so much for inviting me.
No, not at all. Thanks for being here. And we've got lots of questions to go through, and I'm sure it'll be a great show. Then right at the end of the conversation, right at the very end, we'll do a Q&A, because I'm sure there's going to be lots of people out there who may have different questions about today's topic. So I'll get right into it, and we'll start with this one. I don't know if you can see that on your screen, Carrie. So I first remember you, Carrie, from years and years ago. I first noticed you on my TV screen when you did Fame Academy. Tell us a little bit about that, how you got into it.
Well, what happened was David and I, in the 1990s, our first clients that we worked with as vocal coaches were Take That, like the first edition of Take That. And we were working with them, and it was so much fun. And then because we'd done Take That, we then got asked to do S Club 7, and then it was the Spice Girls, and then all the boy bands and the girl like Atomic Kitten. There was just loads of them at the time.
Wow.
We were like the coaches to pretty much all of those bands. And so what happened was, when Pop Idol came along, it was started by Simon Fuller, who managed S Club 7. So he was already aware of us, and he asked us to be the coaches on Pop Idol. So that was our very first experience of sort of coaching on telly, as it were. And then just a few months after that, the Endemol, who were about to start making Fame Academy, contacted David and said, would you like to audition to be a judge and vocal coach on this new series? And so he said, yeah, but why don't you audition Carrie as well? Because did you not see her on Pop Idol? And I just had a baby, and I probably looked very different. They were like, no, didn't even notice she was there. So they auditioned both of us. And on the final audition, we got through and through and through with a load of other vocal coaches. And on the last audition, David got laryngitis.
Oh, no.
So he could barely speak, and I got the job. So he was very pleased for me. And it was just the most wonderful experience, because having done Pop Idol, which was also the best show, there was Will and Gareth, it was the Will and Gareth one. So everyone was, the whole country seemed to be involved in that show. And it's amazing to work on a show that becomes successful as it goes. And it felt like it was the first of its kind. We'd had pop stars, but this was the first sort of individual pop star that we were looking for. So that was great. But Fame Academy was a different show. With Pop Idol, it was very much, you get 20 minutes with them on a Saturday night. It's like being thrown to the lions, you either survive or you don't. Whereas with Fame Academy, it was much more nurturing. They had no contact with the outside world. We were there pretty much 24 hours a day with them. And it was incredible. It was nurturing. It was pastoral. It had the excitement of a live show. We had 2 kind of Big Brother type programs in the middle of the week. And I just loved doing it. I loved being a judge. I loved being a coach. I loved being with the students. And it was really the time of my life. And from that particular series, we then did the celebrity version. And because that was a back-to-back once every night, David then joined me as a coach and a judge as it progressed through. And so we then both worked on Fame Academy. But
so was Pop Shop before that? Because
after. So I don't know about you, but I'd watched a fair load of kids TV, and it was the music on most kids TV programs was just so second rate. I was just like, this is not good enough. We need better music for our kids. And so David and I wrote all these, I think it was 38 songs in the space, and recorded within 6 weeks. It was crazy. And then we made this. The BBC were brilliant. CBeebies were fantastic. They gave us the slot, and we made the show. And do you know what's really amazing, Kevin, about this actually was, at the time, we knew nothing about autism. We had no encounters. We had 2 children that we didn't know were autistic at the time. But David and I sat down and we said, let's make a TV show that our children would love. So we wrote all these episodes, 30 episodes, completely targeted at Talia and Imogen. And we were then absolutely swamped with all these letters from parents of autistic children. And they were saying the most amazing things like, you know, my child is 2 years old, they love your show, I pretend to be Carrie, they pretend to be David. And you may get lots of letters like emails like this, but this is extraordinary because my child is talking for the first time.
Wow.
Pretending to be you and David. There were just, I must have had literally half a dozen just on that one thing of children talking for the first time. It was really mind-blowing. And David and I were saying, it's not amazing how all these parents of autistic children are writing to us. I wonder why that is.
Wow.
But years later, obviously, we made it in 2007. By 2009, we had fully entered the autism world, and it all started to make sense.
So coming right from the very start of your career, Carrie, you were a singer, weren't you, in a pop band?
Yeah, I was a singer and a dancer. My first job was as a dancer on a program called Top of the Pops. When I left school at 15, I auditioned, and my first job was dancing. I was a dancer on the show, and that was brilliant because I was, 15 years old. There's like Spandau Ballet and Duran Duran, and so I'm quite old. And it was brilliant. There were all these pop stars that I was following. I was suddenly on the program with. So it was a great first job and a great introduction to telly because I learned so much about how telly works through doing that show.
So you as a vocal coach, because when it comes to music, I don't know anything about music. I don't know anything about singing or vocal coaches or anything like that.
I've been watching you and your duets with Kylie. I would disagree.
Oh, do you think so? Oh, you're making me blush now. So, when you've got somebody in the studio, or when you're doing like Pop Idol or Fame Academy, and you've got these really big pop stars, and how do you feel as a person when you're telling them that they've got their vocals wrong, or they're out of tune, or things like that?
It's a challenge, isn't it?
Is it a challenge, or do you find it that do you find that they may feel that you're intimidated, or they're intimidated, or how is it? Because I don't know anything about vocal coaches.
Do you know what? That is such a good question, because I think that I teach people that are just coming into the industry to people that are, Gwyneth Paltrow when she's about to do the Country Music Awards. I'll be coaching her 20 minutes before she goes on stage. So it really is, and all stages in between. So the main thing as a coach that I want to do is to find out who this person is. And I have, from day one, record companies have historically sent me the people that everybody else has given up on. They'll go, we've got this artist and they're a nightmare and they don't want to learn. And I work with them and I just think they're magical and amazing and individual and quirky and different. And these are the people that for me are deeply interesting. These are the people who for me make the best pop stars because they're quirky and different and individual. So as a coach, I'm always wanting to bring that out. So that's I guess where my heart is. And so I always hope that when I meet an artist, they can very quickly catch on to that I'm for them, that I want them to be the best they can be. And it's like us working together to find the treasure that's inside them. So if there are times where I go, just pitch it up a bit, they don't mind, because it's in the context of probably so many other things that I'm saying, like, yeah, you're amazing, I love that, oh, I love it when you did this. Just pitch that bit up. And I think they can take that. They seem to be able to take that. I've always been known for being very honest, but also I'm someone who's known to be encouraging. So I kind of like that combination. And it's always nice when the great thing about doing Fame Academy, in fact, was that people began to define me a little bit. And that in some ways is not good, but there were good things from that, which is I like Carrie because she's always honest and she's always encouraging. And I think, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's good. I'll be more of that then. Encouragement is good for that.
Yeah, so it's just getting the best out of everybody. So the contestants who are there, who would you say was your favorite band or singer or group you worked with?
I think there have been a number of people that we've coached over the years who've just been a total delight. I suppose the Spice Girls would have to be high on the list, and we've worked with them since 1998 and
Wow.
continued all the way through, right up. We were coaching them last year for their tour. So those guys are truly amazing. Someone like a Melanie C, who is so talented and so willing to learn.
Yeah, I was watching a YouTube video of her the other day, and she's such a nice person. She's just so warming, and she seems a really caring person.
Yeah, she
So
is.
now, so the question is then, Carrie, and I won't be offended by any means. So you've been watching me on Smule.
Yeah.
What would you say how to coach me if you were coaching me?
What I have loved, what I've noticed, actually, one of my favorite bits of you on Smule is actually before you sing. Is your absolute adoration of Kylie. You can see in your face. It's like she's in the front room with you. And that those are my favorite bits, are just watching you going, wow, it's me and Kylie. But singing along, it's just, that's, singing is for everybody. And that's what I love about it. It's just you're so clearly you're a fan of Kylie's, aren't you, on a grand scale? And that's what comes across, is that warmth, that love of what you're doing. And that's the stuff that, in a way, I can't teach you to love what you're doing. So in a way, that's the basis. If we were working together, we would start from that place. It's like, you're loving this, so let's just work on a little bit of technique here and there, and you'd soon see improvements. But it's great. I mean, I love those TikTok, all those stuff where people performing. It's great.
Yeah. And would you say, as a vocal coach, Carrie, would you say that music therapy and music helps people, children and adults with autism?
Oh my gosh, yes, 100%. Well, we know that, I mean, just looking at the different systems that go on in our bodies scientifically, medically, we can see that when people sing, like serotonin, oxytocin levels are all raising. So this is great. This is going to make us feel like we're in love. This is going to make us feel like we've had a 1 hour jog just singing for 10 minutes. But there's also our other systems as well, the endocannabinoids system. This is really worth typing into Google after we finish. Endocannabinoid system. So this is the receptors that are in our body that, if we were taking cannabis,
is that like CBD oil? Because I've heard that CBD oil helps with the.
So the reason why CBD oil works is because in our bodies, they only discovered this in the 90s. There are receptors to receive that endocannabinoid. So if you do fitness or you do dance, your endocannabinoidal rate goes up by 20% or something. If you sing, it goes up by 42%. It's like the biggest thing you can do to give yourself like a big rush of excitement. So singing medically, scientifically is proven.
And that's what I found with me just recently over these last 3 weeks in lockdown. I've been singing on the Smule app, and when I've come off, I've actually felt really, I honestly can say I feel really uplifted. And
it's so good that you're doing that, Kevin. I think for anyone, any of us that struggle with anxiety or overload or any of those things, to be able to have those strategies where, if I just do 10 minutes of this, even though I don't particularly want to right now, if I just do 10 minutes of this, it might change the way I feel. And so it's worth it. And it's different. You have to just trial and error, isn't it? None of us can go, everyone should go out and sing, because that's not going to work for everyone. But it's finding those things that do make you feel good, whether that's cosplay or whether that's reading about a subject of your special interest, or whether that's something like fitness or singing or dance, any of those things that you can do that just raise your spirit and are doing something for you internally. That's got to be a good thing.
So does singing actually raise and increase the levels of endorphins?
Yeah, so endorphins, oxytocin, serotonin, they are all raised. So it's like going out and jogging or dancing or doing fitness, 100%, yeah.
So everybody needs to start singing.
Yeah,
yeah,
100%, yeah. I mean, that's really what we're about, is getting the world singing. It doesn't matter what you sound like, it's actually just doing it. And also, singing is about you, it's about your identity. If you play an instrument, that's outside of yourself, but singing is your voice. And for people that don't feel like they're heard, being able to sing is a really important thing.
Brilliant. Now, Carrie, let's talk a little bit about you're a presenter on BBC One show and you do BBC Radio London. And you probably saw maybe a few months ago, which I actually entered a competition for BBC Your Voices. I
Did
don't know
you?
if yeah, and I actually got through to the first stage. But my story, it was quite a funny story. You had to give a 60-second story to four BBC presenters.
That's right, but you didn't come through London, did you? Because I was one of the judges in London.
No,
You
it
must
was
have
it was
gone
Sta-
somewhere else.
it was Staffordshire, yeah. But I actually got through, and the story which I gave, I'll tell you the story now. It'll
Yeah,
probably
tell me. I'm interested.
it'll probably make you laugh because it is absolutely hilarious. And I had to say it in 60 seconds. And the story was, as you know, I've always wanted to meet Kylie, and we went down to London because I won it was an award ceremony, and I bumped into Dame Mary Perkin, who's the co-founder of Specsavers, and she was telling me, she said, if you could meet somebody, who would it be? And I said, it probably would be definitely Kylie Minogue. And she said, well, I'll see what I can do for you. She says, because Kylie does lots of our glasses, our Specsavers range.
Yeah.
So anyway, she says, I'll speak to my PA and I'll try and get it sorted for you. So this is the 60-second clip I had to tell the presenter. So I narrowed it down in 60 seconds. So I said, really want to meet her. And they said, well, she said, let's see what we can do. Anyway, about a week later, a knock came on my door, and this giant, massive 6-foot parcel. I was like, well, what's this? I go to my living room. I opened it up. I was really excited. I thought, oh, what's this? Somebody sent me a present. Because when you get parcels, you don't know what they are, do you? Sometimes you can be like, really excited. Yeah, that big. I opened it up, and it was a cutout figure of Kylie.
Oh my gosh, were you like, I'm so disappointed? Oh no, that's like, you want to be grateful, but like you're feeling really bitter.
Yeah. So, but it was funny at the time.
Oh, that is brilliant. And where is that cutout now?
It's it's because since I've moved out, it's no longer with me.
Oh,
so
she's in someone's garden.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit more about autism. So you have 2 girls on the spectrum.
Yay.
And when did you first become aware of your children being on the spectrum?
Well, it's a really interesting one because I've got 4 children. So the oldest one is now 25. That's Olive. And she was always different. But when that's your first child, you don't really know. And also, I think the older I get, I realize that David and I are actually quite different as well. So for us, she felt really normal. Whatever normal is, she was it because she was like us. So then Talia came along, and Talia was just different, but in a different way to Olivia. Talia didn't want her foods touching. Talia needed to sit at the dinner table in the same place every single day. And there were certain things. She would line all her toys up in high order. We just thought, she's a genius. She's amazing. And who wouldn't want to sit at the same place every day? Why not? So that really, even though she was different, it was only when she went to school and other kids started to point out to her that she was different. That's when we were like, why are these kids so mean? I just don't get that. Why? She's like, great. She's such a great kid. And then Imogen was born so she's about 5 years younger than Talia. So she was born, and maybe when she would have been just 3 or 2.5. We went on holiday, and in the airport, there was a really high ringing sound. And Imogen put her hands over her ears. And then Imogen put her hands over her ears every single time there was any noise that was just out of the normal range. And then she put her hands on her ears when she sat next to the fridge. And then you'd go to the supermarket, she'd go to the loo, and she was just potty training. The minute someone put a hand dryer on, she'd be scooting out the toilets.
Mm.
So we then thought, this is just, maybe we need to get this looked at. So I did what everyone does, and I typed into Google hearing sensitivity, and up came autism, and all these other lists of things came up. And I realized that Imogen was ticking quite a few of the boxes for some of those other things too. At one point we thought she was deaf because she wasn't answering us. And also she would talk about herself in the third person, and she would use words at a minimum. She'd say, she want drink. And so we were like, okay, that's fine if she wants to say it like that. But we suddenly realized, actually, together with all these other little bits, like she only wanted to wear her clothes off one shoulder. Everything had to be off the shoulder, which I quite liked, but was unusual in the middle of the winter. So we took her to the health visitor, and the health visitor was a fantastic woman, and said, she's an older lady about to retire, and she said, I think your child might be autistic. Let's get a test. And then when we were waiting for the test, I began to think, actually, Talia's got a lot of these traits as well. Maybe I should get them both tested. It had been a couple of years before that my older daughter had been diagnosed with ADHD. No, not ADHD at the time, just dyspraxia. So we went back to the same child psychologist, and got Imogen and Talia tested on the same day, privately in the end. And both were diagnosed immediately. Talia with Asperger's, as you could be at the time, and Imogen with high functioning autism. They're quite different. Their presentations are quite different. So we then had these little labels, or what other people would say, massive, great, bloody labels. But for us, we were still living with the same incredible kids. So for us, they now had a label, but they were exactly the same to live with. And I always said that a label is only a problem if you've got a problem with the label. I don't actually have a problem with the label. I think my kids are wonderfully, marvelously autistic. There are challenges.
Just talking about labels, Carrie, sorry to interrupt you there, but talking about labels, because I think it's really important. When obviously a parent, when they're getting their child, and there's probably many parents watching this now, when they want to get their child diagnosed, they are looking for that label, aren't they? Because some parents want closure. And I'm not a parent of an autistic child. I've got no children, so I don't know. I can't, speak on behalf of a parent. But I think with labels, some doctors and professionals and psychiatrists and psychologists want to put a label on a child, where some parents want that label, need that label to help that particular child to progress through school, through education, etc. But how do you feel, Carrie, with the label now, with the label as the universal label now, which has come from America, which has been brought over here now, where they want to, well, when I got diagnosed, I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome at the age of 27, and I have an identical twin brother who is severely autistic on the Canner end of the spectrum. But now professionals, when they diagnose, and you're probably aware of this yourself, was when they're diagnosing children and adults, they're using that universal label as autism. So do you still think it should be separate labels, or do you think everybody should be labeled as autism?
I think that's a difficult question to answer. And I know that out in our community, there's so many views on this, aren't there?
Yeah.
It's part of me knows that Imogen and Talia, my two daughters, are very, very different.
Yeah.
So Talia she was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. She was one of those girls that, again, we talk about, that are under the radar, that are very shy, that are very empathetic, that are just quieter perhaps, whereas Imogen is in your face. She's going to blurt. She doesn't mask as well. When I say as well, I'm not even sure that that's the right thing to say, because I don't think masking is good for you. It's terrible for your mental health. But I think Talia finds it easier to be a little bit more bilingual with the neurotypical world. I think what we have got with the autism world is this massive spectrum that everyone is fighting to be heard. And I think the fact that we have only one word makes that very difficult for each voice to be heard. It's really important that we hear the non-verbal ends, those, and again, that's possibly selective, elective, but understanding that end of the spectrum, what people would call low functioning, you know, what does that really even mean? But they are very different. I think that, for instance, Talia would feel she had more in common with her neurotypical peers than she would with someone who was perhaps on the lower end of the spectrum. And that makes it very difficult, because it makes people feel like they're shut out or they're not included. So I think, you know, even when we started to do more about girls and try to get the girls' profile raised, there were people that said to me, why are you doing nothing about boys? It's hard, isn't it? There's always going to be someone that you miss, and all those voices, every voice needs to be heard. And ultimately, that's what we want, is that the whole spectrum is heard. But it's hard for someone who knows, like I was back in 2007, I knew nothing about autism. So if someone just said to me autism, I would just think of what's the one thing that I can think of. And even when people said it's a spectrum, I don't think people fully understand what that means. And people still today, Talia gets told, I don't think you're autistic. I've looked at her feed. She's not autistic. She wouldn't be able to do that interview if she was autistic. Kevin's not autistic, is he? Look at him. He's interviewing Carrie. He looks absolutely fine. Can't possibly be autistic. So there are judgments made. That can be really offensive. Really offensive.
Really offensive.
Oh my gosh, I've got all these challenges I'm having to overcome just to sit on my sofa right now. That not everyone's going to get it. And I think it's about us trying to understand everybody's challenges, whatever those are, and everybody's strengths, whatever those are.
I don't know whether I'm going to be a bit controversial here, may upset somebody or upset some people now, but what one of the questions which you just want to go back to, Carrie, is when you said about masking, it's not good for your mental health. So I know a lot of autistic people do mask and pretend to be somebody else. I always think, if you're a person living with autism like myself, I am who I am. I'm not going to pretend to be anybody else. I'm not going to pretend to act or, you know, live in the neurotypical world. You know, I live in my world. I live in my autistic world. If people don't like me, that's fine. I don't have a problem. You know, go away if you don't like me.
Yeah, I so agree with you.
So when I just wanted to touch on that subject there. So when you were saying about people masking and it's not good for your mental health, can you just explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think that masking is an interesting word, and I think sometimes you have to unpack. It's a bit like, let's unpack the spectrum and see what does low, what does high even mean. I love that expression that I see on Twitter amongst the actually autistic community, which is, on Monday I'm low functioning, on Wednesday I'm high functioning. You know, I think I love it explained in that way. But in terms of masking, it's probably not my, again, I'm a parent, I don't know if I'm autistic, but I'm speaking as a parent right now. What I see in my daughters is their ability, like for Talia, she's not being somebody else when she's masking. She's just somehow able to communicate really well sometimes. And sometimes she's really not able to do that. Masking, more than anything, I think for her would probably be about her anxiety, would be that actually I'm going to school. Firstly, I don't want to go to school. Secondly, that teacher doesn't get me. Thirdly, I'm in that class where it's full of 3 bullies that have always hated me for the last 2 years and done nothing but be horrible. So in order to survive those 2 hours of lessons, I'm going to have to pretend that I'm okay. And that, when you're doing that, actually not just for 2 hours, but 6 hours a day, day in, day out, and then you get home and you're also having to deal with social media and what is coming at you. There's never a break. You know, I would say that I don't know what it's like for you, Kevin, but for many people that I am part of my community, the autistic community, they do need to get home and it's like, take the makeup off, get in your PJs and just be away from all the noise, all the everything coming at you. I mean, everyone needs that to a certain extent, but I do believe that autistic people probably need that more than others when they've really interacted with the world on a really intense basis. All that sensory overload that's coming at you to try and keep going, you know, when there's all this distraction, it's important that people are able to rest from that without crashing. So I guess that's the challenge, that it's either I'm at school and I'm coping, or I'm completely crashing, which is what was happening with Talia all the time.
Yeah.
Now, Imogen doesn't mask so well, so she will just sit in the lesson and go, this is really boring. Has anyone ever told you that your teaching is really awful? And part of me wants to kind of go, yeah, you're so clever. I shouldn't say that. But, you know, she's telling the truth. It's
she's literal. She's to the point.
It's literal. She's just, but you know, she manages so much better because of it. She's not like, it's like water off a duck's back. I don't care if that teacher's, you know, I'm not going to put up with this crap lesson, and the bully's over in the corner, so I'm just going to tell him, do you know what, you're a bully, you know. So in a way, she survives better. Well, she did, until school said the blurting's got to stop, and you have just remain in the room and you can't just walk out. Then it became impossible. So they pretty much locked her in a room until they said she couldn't go to school anymore. And then she's been out of school for 2.5 years. So this beautiful, blurty, sociable, wonderful 14-year-old now has a social circle about this big. So I think that's criminal, personally. So it's you know, had she been able to learn to mask, maybe we'd have had a different situation. But I don't want her to learn to. I don't want to have to teach her to do that. It's not right. We should be allowing people to be who they are.
Yeah, I think one of the important things what you just brought up recently during this conversation, when you were saying about, you know, people who can articulate, who can talk, who can communicate effectively, and a lot of people, even let's say the professionals, they even think, oh, because Jane down the road has got autism, oh, she's at university, she's doing this, she's doing that, so therefore she can't be really autistic.
Yeah.
That really, really gets to me, because I just feel that, you know, I got diagnosed at the age of 27, and every single day for me is a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge. And I remember my mum saying to me, and she's probably watching this now, but I remember my mum saying to me years and years ago when I got diagnosed, she said, even though Sean's severely autistic, is non-verbal, he lives in a residential home, he has 24-hour nursing care, but he doesn't understand relationships, he doesn't understand money, he doesn't understand death, he doesn't understand religion, etc., etc. She said, Kevin, out of you and Sean, you're the worst. And I was like, what do you mean the worst? She says, well, I know Sean's needs nursing care, he needs, you know, feeding, etc., etc. But Sean, because of his autism, lives in a world where he's totally locked in, and he doesn't understand about relationships, when the next bill's coming, money. He doesn't understand about anxiety or anything like that, where I know everything. And that is magnified so much. And that's what really upsets me about when professionals say, you know, I had one professional many years ago who sort of like questioned my diagnosis, said, you can't have autism.
That's just so awful. I don't know why they need to just stop saying that crap. It's just unbelievably unhelpful and unhelpful to you and to your family. I just want to touch on one thing you said there. I just want to, you know, thank mums and dads out there and people who get it. Those people, you're a super parent, and we beat ourselves up so much. We need to just go easy on ourselves. You're probably doing a great job. But for our autistic community, you know, there are different challenges wherever you are on the spectrum. And I think also for you, Kevin, I know certainly for Talia, the mental health challenges can be really extreme. You know, I haven't had to experience what your mum has had to, or you have had to experience with your twin brother. But when you've sat on suicide watch, not knowing if your child will even make 16, as a parent, I'm changed by that experience. And I would go to the school gate and I'd talk to the other mums, and they'd be like, oh, little Johnny's not going to get his spellings right this week, and I've got a private tutor and I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'd be thinking, I need to rush home now to check if my child's still breathing. My world was upended by mental health challenges with my children. And really, you know, obviously everyone wants to fight for everything. You want to fight for all areas of the spectrum and people that aren't on the spectrum. You want to fight for everyone. But for me, these are the people that are my people. It's people that just have those mental health challenges going on as well, who do present to the world, and the world might think, I'm not sure whether you're autistic or not. I really have such compassion for those people. I think it's super hard.
Definitely, yeah. And your daughter's now a actress, isn't she?
I've got 2 actors. Yeah, I don't know how I managed that.
Tell us a little bit more about that, Carrie.
I was like, right, my kids are not going to go into the industry like us. So far, we have failed on 2 counts. We've got 2 that are past 18 and both are now actors. Wow. The older one, Olive, is in Save Me on Sky Atlantic at the moment. She's one of the lead roles in that, playing Grace. Brilliant. If you haven't watched Save Me.
No, I haven't. So what's it about?
Oh my gosh, it won the
BAFTA.
Yeah, it won a BAFTA for the first series. So she's one of the leads. The story sort of revolves around her in the second series, and oh my gosh, is she good? She's murderous. So it's quite interesting watching my daughter be murderous. Yeah, it's fantastic. And then Talia, who, do you know what? I don't even know where to begin. I spent years fighting for this child, for school to get it, for people to understand her. I was told, even with a report in my hand, I was told, no, Mrs. Grant, I'm sorry, she's not autistic. I'd be like, it's in the report. You have to believe the report. That's a qualified professional. No, sorry. You have to make adjustments. No, we don't. Yes, you do legally. Well, if we do them for her, we have to do them for everyone. But she's autistic. Well, if we say she's autistic, we're not allowed to do that because that's against her privacy. Like, oh my God, you guys are awful. And school was so hard, and we didn't know where this would end. I sat on suicide watch 6 times in 3 years thinking, I don't know what to do for this magical, amazing human. It's like the world just doesn't get her. And where will this end? I don't know if I'm going to even be a parent to her in the next, few weeks. That was always, I lived like this for years. And then an advert on Facebook came along and said, Hollyoaks are looking for an autistic teenage girl. We saw the advert, and she went for the audition along with 149 other autistic teenage girls. And from day one, from the first email they sent us, they were like, this is where you're going to audition. Here's a picture of the building. This is, I don't know what her name was, Susan. She's on reception. This is a picture of Susan. This is what Susan will ask you. Then you'll be asked to sit down. These are the people that you will see in your audition. This is so-and-so. This is so-and-so. This is the questions they'll ask you. Please learn the script, and we'll ask you to do it 2 or 3 times. If you have any questions, please ask. Oh my gosh, I wish they did that for everybody, because most people in the arts would love just to have that kind of support. But from day one, it was absolutely 100% first-class care, first-class reasonable adjustments. They then had a creative enabler who worked with Talia for the first few, I think she was there for 6 weeks with her, translating between the director and the cast and Talia. She had a room. They were like, what else does she need? No one has their own room, but would you like us to provide her own room? I was like, yes, please. She needs that space to escape. They listened, and it made all the difference. And I feel like this proved everything that I was fighting for all those years, that if you just provide these little things for my child will begin to change. Yeah. My child won't remain that anxious, suicidal teenager. My child will improve in her mental health. She'll always be autistic because she's fabulously autistic. But this anxiety and this depression can change if you change the environment around her and you make her feel welcome and you listen to her and you hear her. And this is what Line Pictures that make Hollyoaks have done. It's been absolutely transformative. They still do. They email me every week. They're like, in this scene coming up next week, there's fairy lights. Is Talia okay with fairy lights? I'm like, yeah, she's fine. Is she okay with a loud bang? No.
No.
Don't do the loud bang. And any school scenes, please, could you make sure that all the people that are the additional cast come in and could they be a little bit quieter, because that's really hard for her. They're just brilliant. They listen to everything we ask and provide over and above. And they say, is this what, if Talia, went through this situation, what would she do? They ask questions about the script. They're absolutely dedicated. And that has been, it's basically saved Talia's life.
So as a parent, I'm sorry to hear about that, Carrie. It must have been awful for you as a parent, as a mother. I haven't got any children, but, just listening to your story there about, your daughter being on suicide watch, and for a parent, my heart breaks for you, because, that must be so difficult knowing that you've got a child and you're fearing for your child, what's going to happen to your child, what's going to happen next. But I'm so pleased that things have turned around, and you must be so, so proud of your daughters.
I'm so proud of them, but I'm also super aware, even with my other 14-year-old daughter coming up who's not been in school for 2.5 years. That's what it's like for so many of our autistic community. And
we're going to talk about that now, about campaigning, because I know you do a lot of campaigning around.
Yeah, you got me on my special interest now.
Yeah, special educational needs. Because I remember one of my friends, Melanie Sykes. She's got a son. She's got a son who's autistic.
Yes.
And I remember, I think it was in the news, and that I think it was about 12 months ago, where she could not get a school for her son. She was like banging on doors, and what is it about special educational needs? People don't get it.
I think that it's that we have a system that at the root has the wrong worldview, the wrong mindset, is potentially corrupt, possibly, but ultimately it's at the root that it doesn't make sense. So if your expectations for every child are ridiculous, if you've got teachers that are burned out and having mental health crisis themselves, if you've got schools that are made into academies, made to compete against each other, where it's all about things rather than people, this whole system sucks. The whole system doesn't work. It doesn't work, but only for a few people anyway. So then when you start to think about people that are not in your little tiny bracket at the top, it's going to be challenging for all of those people. And then when you get the more complex cases, it just isn't working, which is why there is no school for my 14-year-old. She's academic. She's got no learning disability, but she's blurty. She's too autistic for mainstream and too academic for special school. And the other thing, I'm also I do question, why do we have to send people to autistic schools? Why are we separating people like they don't belong? Autistic people are with us. They're in our community. So let's have schools that work for everybody. I don't know, I'm banging on a drum that I feel like most of the time people are just not even interested. Well, people are interested, but the people that make the decisions, they're miles away from this.
I think for me, when I was at school, when I look back at mainstream school, I was, went to school, got GCSEs, but the setting, mainstream school, I hated it with a vengeance, because I was bullied. People knew I had a twin brother who was autistic, so I got targeted. But I wouldn't say, not a special school, but I think if I was in a, what's the word? I don't want to use the wrong words, but if I was in a different setting,
a gentler school.
Yes.
Just a gentle school.
Yeah, I think I would have excelled a lot more. Because way back when I was at school, nobody knew what Asperger's syndrome was, and hardly many people even knew what autism was then.
Yeah.
So for me, school was really, really difficult. And, and probably yourself as well, so many parents out there, the special educational needs system doesn't get it. The system's not geared up.
No.
Children are being homeschooled. What's going on with this government? Why can't children get the right education?
I think so much about this is about communication. I think we don't listen to parents enough. I think that, well, for instance, I run a support group for parents of autistic girls. And we run a group for the girls too.
Is that on social media?
No, we're off everything. It's just in our house. 140 families. Wow. We've been running that for 6 years. But I know amongst our families, there's such a rich resource of information. And amongst our girls, there is a rich resource of information. We should be asking the adults, like I love talking to you, Kevin. I'm super aware as I talk to you that your challenges at the age that you're at now are going to be very different to the challenges that I'm thinking about, because I've got an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old. And I think it's important that we listen to those young people that have just come out of school, that maybe are in their 20s, that can look and say, this is what we would have needed. Obviously, it's going to be different for everybody, but it's true that every autistic person is different. Of course, that's true. But let's not oversimplify that, because there is so much that can be done just on a base level that would work for every autistic person. Like, let's just go into the classroom and see how noisy it is. Let's just see how, is there, in primary school, are there pictures on every single wall? It's overwhelming. There are things that would change the situation that don't cost any money. This is not about finance. This is about mindset. This is about actually listening to parents or listening to autistic people and hearing what they've got to say. Wouldn't it be great if we had more autistic teachers? We have got some autistic teachers out there. I know I've done a bit on social media about that, but we need more autistic teachers. But until we make those adjustments for our autistic teachers, they're not going to want to join the profession. And it's hard enough to being a teacher even without autism. My friends who are neurotypical are on their knees trying to be teachers. Maybe lockdown will change this stuff. Maybe lockdown will make us ask, can we do this another way? Maybe some of the questions that people like yourself, people like myself, and many others have been asking, maybe finally those questions will start to be asked. I really hope so. I'm hopeful. I'm always hopeful.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that, Carrie. Just few other topics. We've got loads of questions coming through. I want to try to get through them. I can see them on my screen. We'll go through some of them. I know you were diagnosed with Crohn's disease many years ago, and this relates to me a lot because my family, my mum and sister, they have Crohn's as well. Yeah. My mum has it in a small bowel, and my sister has it in a large bowel. Do you think there's any connection around inflammatory bowel disease and autism?
I think there are papers online that show that there is a connection. I found it very interesting a few years back when I went to speak, I think it was the autism show, and there was about 800 people there. And maybe I'm exaggerating. I think there was that many there. And I said, and I was quite new to the whole autism world. I said, I've got Crohn's disease. And I seem to meet people that are autistic that have got parents or they've got Crohn's disease or colitis too, or bowel issues. And I said, if you could just put your hand up if you've got any gut issues. I mean, like literally the whole room put their hand up. So I think there probably are connections between those things. And I think the science supports it. I remember trying to read a couple of papers a few years ago and thinking, these are far too technical for me, but it did look like they were actually scientifically proving that. Yeah.
So how does your Crohn's affect you on a day-to-day basis? Because I know it can be a very debilitating condition.
Yeah.
And it can just it's just an awful disease.
Yeah.
Do you look past the disease, or do you just get on with life?
Yeah, I think when I first got diagnosed, I'd say it took me a good 5 years to get my head around. I got Crohn's at 18, but wasn't diagnosed till I was 20. And by the time I was 25, I'd had a big section of my bowel removed. So I'd had big surgery. Life was in and out of hospital. And I felt like someone had dropped me in the middle of Piccadilly Circus and asked me to find my own way home without a map. It was off my grid. I didn't know how to cope. I'd planned my life. I'd got it all worked out. And suddenly sickness wasn't part of the plan. So it took me a while to begin to understand what that really meant. And I think as I went through my journey, it felt like on a number of times I was dropped back in Piccadilly Circus again. After about the third time of being in this place of crisis, I finally learned, actually, you know what, this is really irritating, but you will find your way home. You will manage to get through this. And I feel like everything that I was prepared for with my Crohn's and trying to deal with that and cope with it and live with it, and appreciate the small wins and live each day as it comes and live each hour as it comes if you're in pain. I think prepared me for what I've had to face with my children. For me, there are challenges that are really heartbreaking, really so difficult, but there are also so many small wins. There are so many magical moments. And for me, Crohn's, autism, ADHD, neurodiversity, yes, there are challenges, but there's also some magic. And for me, it's about digging out the magic, trying to find the positivity, trying to find those bits that mean, actually, I've got an advantage here. I know, for instance, I work in my industry because I'm different. I don't know what diversity I have. I'm not diagnosed with anything, but I'm definitely different. And that difference has been an advantage for me. When I was younger, it was a lot more confusing because I felt like I didn't fit. But as I've got older, I've realized I run my own race, and there's lots of other people that run alongside me. I'm not that unusual. There's plenty of people like me. And you find your tribe, don't you? You find the people that get you, that you think, oh, they're like my DNA, that person. And those people might be autistic people. They might be neurodiverse in some other way, or they might be neurotypical. But it's about finding, it's a bit like you said earlier, you know, if people don't like me, they don't like me. You know, I kind of have found that same thing for myself. I found my own people. Although I have to say, I am 100 times more sensitive than you. If someone doesn't like me, oh my gosh, I really hurt. I really get hurt. And
are you like me, Carrie? You can go into a room, and this happens to me quite a lot of times. I can go into a room and I can sense straight away. I don't know what it is, but I can sense straight away whether that person, even before I even start talking to them, I can even sense whether that person likes me or dislikes me.
Yeah. And you know what? You know why this is really important? Because first of all, that's not meant to be an autistic trait, but that is absolutely gifted what you're doing there when you walk into that room. But can you imagine a little person with a not such a developed adult brain as yours is 8 years old, and they walk into the classroom, they're picking up on all of that the same way. They're like radar. There's an oversensitivity in the way that there is perhaps in the hearing and in the smelling and the taste and all those things. There's also a sensitivity to atmospheres, to what's actually going on here. And sometimes, you know, when they're young, they don't always read that right. But I trust sometimes my kids, like Talia will say stuff. Someone will come to our house and they'll smile their way through and they'll leave the house and she'll say, that person's really sad. And I think, how did she know that? That's actually true. So I'm very sensitive to that. And I do also have to, I've learned as I've got older to separate my own feelings from that, because I used to take on people's feelings and then think, why do I feel so sad? Whereas now I go, oh, hang on a minute, that's their feeling. So let that stay with them. And this isn't you, you know, it's ridiculous amounts of empathy.
Brilliant. So we've got loads of questions coming up here. We'll try and get through, if you've got another 10 minutes, Carrie, so we can try and get through these questions. So let's have a look. So we got one here from Joe on the screen. I don't know if you can see that, Carrie. She says, my daughter, 16 in September, has autism and dyspraxia and learning problems. We are looking for secondary colleges. Have you got any words of wisdom for me as I'm stressed out, worried mum?
Well, first of all, I really totally understand what it means to feel like you're stressed out and tearing your hair out, because you want the best for your child. You really, really do. And you want to make sure that you get it right. And you're also, there's this horrible fear that if I get this wrong, it's all on me. You know, if she doesn't succeed, it's because of me, because I chose the wrong school. And I've been there and done that. So that's really difficult. One thing I started to do as a parent, and I don't know how other people feel about this, but I started writing reports. And I would suggest if you're at an age where you feel, if you're the autistic person yourself, to also do that. Like, everyone writes a bloody report on your child, and yet the parent who's with your child the whole time doesn't get to write a report. So I go into every meeting and I'm like, here's my report. And I'm like, my report should matter. If we're giving people equal status around the table, we have to let their voices be heard. Yeah. And quite often, if that child isn't able to express themselves, some people really are, but if they're not able to express themselves, as parents, we have the right to be able to do that without some, like you said, Kevin, professional going, well, you're not really struggling that much. You know, you seem to be okay, and you're hitting all your targets in school. Well, actually, I might be hitting my targets on my academics, but I'm having a nervous breakdown inside. Yeah. So let's try and represent that, and the parent report, and if the autistic person can do that themselves. I did this thing where I filmed Talia because she wasn't able to write it down. She was about 14, and I said, "How does it feel when you walk into school?" And she gave me everything. And then I said, "And how does it feel when you're bullied?" She gave me everything. How does it feel when the teacher doesn't understand you? And then I edited that together, and it had all her advantages and all the things she loved, but it was about 5 minutes long, said all the things that she was challenged by. I would say that film probably influenced school more than any other document that the school saw, because she was saying in her own words, I'm hungry to learn, but I hate school because these things are not happening for me. So write your own reports. Make sure your voice is heard. You have the right for your voice to be heard. You don't need to do that in a pushy way. You just do that in a gentle way. You've got a right to be heard. End of.
Brilliant.
Another question.
So we got one from Rachel. She says, Pop Shop was fantastic show. Hannah watched it over and over.
Oh, yeah. Pop Shop's just, I love Pop Shop, but they couldn't afford to make a second series. I'm really annoyed because I do it for free now. Pop Shop was brilliant. So much fun to do. I feel like there's part of me that's never grown up. So I love doing stuff for kids. I value children, and I love what we did with that show, because it was brilliant. We were passing, like, I'd be like, take my guitar, and I'd be going towards the camera, and then children at home apparently were just like going, I've got the guitar, and then they were putting the strap on and playing guitar. It was brilliant.
So we've got a message from Connor. He says, we have a massive problem with children with PDA, as it's misunderstood, but it's part of autism. We've got a message from...
Absolutely. I would say there is a natural level of demand avoidance with autism. But again, I question that. Is there demand avoidance because the world is not set up for autistic people? You know, what are any of us like? If someone doesn't listen to us, we become avoidant. You know, that's a natural thing. But there are, as they say, pathological means it stands outside of the range of normal. So when there is outside of the range of normal, you've then got to work out how to be that super negotiator parent. You know, what I do is I never tell my children to go to bed. I put two pairs of pajamas in their room. I go, here's a blue pair, here's a red pair, when you fancy. And then they've got a choice. And it's the same with food. I feel like I run a restaurant with about 5 different choices of meal, and that way we're not going to get, you know, you avoid all of the, you're going to eat this and I'm telling you to do this. No one likes being told what to do they? I mean, it's a horrible thing being told what to do. So the sooner we can encourage responsible independence, I think is great. That's something that we're working on with our 14-year-old, is just, you make your own decisions for your life. We will try to support you through that. And when there's a struggle, you know, we're here. So it's a lot more about negotiation, and I think just getting through it somehow. It's not easy though. And as a parent, it can be really challenging. And I think the times I find it the hardest are when one of the children has decided, I really want to go to the market. I love going to the market. And on Thursday, I'm going to go to the market. And then it gets to Thursday and it's getting later and later and later. And you realize they may not make it to the market. So you then say, if you don't leave now, you're not going to make it to the market, at which point they go, stop pressurizing me. That's it. I'm not going.
Yeah.
And you feel like you've screwed up so big time. And sometimes it's the very things they even want to do that they struggle to do. And I think it takes a lot of understanding to get into the mind and the psychology of someone who is against even their own desires, going against their own demands. I think that's really hard. And I heard it once put in a way that is, there are two dials, which is the demands, the toleration and the demands. And if the toleration is really up, like I can't tolerate anything, we need to turn the demands down.
Yeah.
And during this lockdown period, I think for many people who've got children who haven't been at home, I've got children who've been at home, so we're absolutely loving lockdown. But if it's your first experience of having your children at home the whole time, the demands have got to go to zero. They've really just got to, don't make any demands. Just let them find their benchmark, their lowest common denominator, and they will then build on that. They let you know their toleration. Once their toleration levels go up, we can put a little bit of demand in there, but it's very much it's like this all day long. I feel like I'm just turning the dials and trying to make sure that I've got the toleration and the demand at the right level.
Well, we've got a big question here, but we've got off the screen, so I'll try and read it out. So we've got Loretta says, my 21-year-old mask and has mixed anxiety, depression disorder, but no diagnosis yet for autism. Still waiting, but my 18-year-old son has a diagnosis of autism, and my other son, 22, and daughter, 26, ADHD. But I think daughter PDA and son autistic. My other son, 23, has to have his food separately on a plate, not touching, plus he likes fussy with clothes labels. He also slides his feet, not walking properly. And my eldest son has always been quiet and has depression.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a big question there.
It's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot
of it.
Lot to take on board. I think one of the hardest things I just want to say that I would immediately pick out from that is when someone's not diagnosed, it makes things 10 times worse. The not knowing means you don't even know what you're dealing with. I think once we begin to understand that actually I've got a neurodiverse family, everybody in my family, including the parents, probably, in our case, that's certainly the case. We're all different. And 4 of us are diagnosed out of the 6. So for us, we've got to work out, how do we do this well? How are we going to do life well with all of these different things going on? And I think it's working out where everyone finds their place. I think once you find your place, you can work on that, but you can't even begin to do that if you don't have a diagnosis. I think it really helps when you know you're autistic. And you can go, I mean, the actually autistic community, I love online. I feel like they have so much to offer one another. And I think, but if you're not part of that, you're really going to feel left out. That's one thing I would say. If you're not autistic, it feels like it's just for them and it's not for me. So I think for those that don't have a diagnosis, it's really a struggle because they don't fit in anywhere. So that would be a big thing for that parent. But I really feel for you, because that's hard work when you're trying to think of all the different needs. When David and I had children, we thought, I'm going to parent, my 4 kids all in the same way. And then you realize that's not going to happen. You're going to have 4 different ways of parenting. You have to become a super parent, and you're not always going to get it right. But I've never met parents like the neurodiverse parents are top of the league. They're the parents that have had to work on their stuff. They're parents that have gone for the training. They're the parents that are hearing and listening and trying to get it right. So the more we can do that, the more we can encourage one another to keep working at it. It becomes easier. I noticed there's quite a few people coming up with the masking.
Yes, we've got another one here. My daughter mask. She suppresses behaviours to fit in the environment she is in at time, with physical and mentally exhausting for her. But this is due to external pressures and judgment of others. But she also challenges authority and speaks out.
Yeah, I guess you can be both, can't you? Both of those things. And maybe perhaps when that masking is becoming really tiring, she might be more likely to blurt during those times. I don't know. I'm not there, but only you would know that as a parent. But I think it's any way that we can lower anxiety is going to help, not just the autistic person, whatever setting they are in. It's going to help everybody. Lowering anxiety is good for everybody. So if we are working with that autistic child, adult person in the workplace, we're going to be helping everybody. Also remembering that young person is going to need time at home where they can just let off steam, where they don't have to mask, where they can get home and go, blah, 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 and be allowed to do that and feel that they can be held through that, So rather than parents going, oh, I've got challenging behaviors, for me, much of the time I'm thinking to myself, I'm not looking at challenging behaviors. I'm trying to think, what is it you're trying to tell me? You're trying to tell me something. So let me try and hear you. Let me see beyond your shouting. Let me see beyond your stomping up the stairs or slamming doors or not leaving your room. Or your need to control. Let me try to work out what it is you're trying to tell me. It's the same as being a vocal coach. What are you trying to sing to me here? What are you trying to say with this song? It's a big scale of that. What are you trying to tell me? I want to hear you. No matter how bad what's coming at me is, I'm desperate to hear you. And I think the more we do that, the more we help to lower the anxiety. And then actually, weirdly, the behaviors do change because people aren't behaving out of that fraught anxiety.
We've got a message there thanks for that, Carrie. We've got a message there by Designed on Periscope, says, thank you for helping us. Oh, thank you. Thanks for the message. Then we've got a message from...
Kevin's amazing. I love that you're doing this, Kevin.
We've got a message from Avril. She says, so glad to see this feed. This is helping me so much. Oh, thank you. As I'm fighting for my daughter at the moment, I can't seem to get her to go to school. And we're all getting as being threatened with fines. That's terrible. And being prosecuted, even when I've asked for so much help. Is there anything you could say about this, Carrie, where, parents like Avril...
Yeah, Avril, this is the kind of thing, this really makes me angry. And I think that I've had so many parents, I remember getting a letter from the school attendance officer saying, your child has been off school. And I sent an email back saying, next time my child's on suicide watch, I'll be sure to take you in with me. It's ridiculous. We should not be demanding this stuff of parents. There are parents who flout the rules and don't send their kids to school when their kids should be in school. For these type of parents and these children, these are the ones we need to care for. We care for all of them, but we need to really understand where the parents are at. You can't manhandle a child. I remember with Tyler, she was the first child that I had that refused to go to school. To begin with, I used to put her under my arm. She was 11. She was quite big. I'd be dragging her down the stairs, shut the car door and go, drive, drive, drive to David. And he'd pull off, pull away. After a while, I just thought, I can't do this. I feel like I'm abusing my child. So you've either got the attendance officer or you've got social services. Which one? Which one? I've had calls from social services when my children have been blue lighted to hospital because of attempts on their life, suicide attempts. And the way that I deal with those people, I've worked out is, for me, it's the best way. I say, you're a social worker. Oh my gosh, I've been waiting for you to call. I'm so pleased you've called me. Yes, I can think of 10 ways that you can help me right now. I'll give you my list of all the different services that I've not been able to access. Here's my list. When you've worked your way through that, definitely come. I really would love a meeting. I'd love to have that. And maybe you could get a whole load of people around the table so we can discuss this and we can have a proper good discussion so we can help this child. I think actually too often parents assume the lower position. Parents assume that they're the bottom of the pole. Parents assume that they are being judged, or they are being judged. They assume that they're in trouble. I'm not in trouble. I'm a great parent. Don't lose sight of that. You're a great parent. And if someone wants to tell you different, challenge them on it. Challenge them on it. Say, I'd love some services. I'm so glad you're the attendance officer. Why don't you make a home visit? Let's set one up now. And let's have a lovely big discussion about how you're going to help my child to get into school. What reasonable adjustments are you going to make to help my child to get into school? Come back as hard as they come at you.
So what would you say, Carrie? Obviously, I haven't got any children who are on the spectrum, but if I had a child who was on the spectrum and they didn't want to go to school because they were having a meltdown or they just couldn't cope, what do parents do? Do you home educate them? Do you let them go? Do you let them go and it affects their mental health and they can become really ill? What do parents do?
Yeah. Do you know, one of the things that's been really helpful for us is having that parent support group, because with the parent support group, you suddenly see, again, I'm going to mention this word, but it's in a different context, a spectrum. So you'll see those children for whom another day at school is going to be a risk on their life, all the way through to the children that have noticed that actually, if you're autistic, maybe you don't have to go to school. So I think what I'll do is I'll tell my parent I'm not going, and they're trying it out perhaps to begin with. That sounds awful. There's probably very few children that are trying it out. Most kids are really struggling with school. So let me just correct that straight away. I'm talking about a big range though. So we need to be able to judge where our child is on that range. Are you still able to get them to get dressed, get fed, get out the house generally? Some parents are not getting their children out their bedrooms. So they're in a different place. But parents say, I'm not there yet. And maybe I can, it's a bit like the demand and toleration thing. Maybe I can lower the demands a bit till I see there's been a bit of a change in the toleration. I think it's very difficult. The minute you start taking your child out of school and you agree to that, it might mean they never want to go back. On the other hand, you could be saving their life. I don't think we took Talia out soon enough. I wish we'd taken her out sooner.
It's very difficult, isn't it?
You've just got to call it, haven't you? And no one knows your child better than you.
Loretta on Facebook says, my 21-year-old failed her college course because of her mixed anxiety depression disorder. No support because no diagnosis of autism.
Yeah. But, the reasonable adjustments that are in part of the law are meant to be there for people with or without a diagnosis. And I've done a little bit of advocacy work with people that have been in colleges and gone in and met their tutors before diagnosis. And I think it's important to find those advocates, find people that are in your community that can go into college with you and be that advocate on your behalf. As parents, we don't know everything always, but once we've learned, we've just got to keep passing those skills on. That once I'd got past needing an advocate, I became an advocate. And I think it's important that we all try to do that as much as we can with the pressures that we have in our lives. But, someone should have been going into that school on behalf of you, Loretta, and your child and saying, this is what you need to be doing for this child. Where are those people? Where are those people? These are the people that we need.
Okay, Joe says, we went through Suicide Watch last year. Sorry to hear that, Joe, but had an absolutely amazing doctor. I'm really pleased to hear that, who sat and listened. And that's what we, what professionals need to do, don't they, Carrie? Yeah. They need to sit, listen to the parents, listen to the autistic child, listen to the autistic adult.
Listening is 90% of it. Most people are so used to not being listened to that just listening has a massive way of soothing people and helping them. I think also it's worth giving, big props to all the professionals that do work with our children who are phenomenal. You spoke earlier, Kevin, about walking into a room and knowing when someone's for you. And you feel that, whether that's an employer, whether that's a teacher, whether that's a school atmosphere or a doctor or a nurse, you feel it when those people do get you. And let's keep telling them, please tell them why they've been good. Say, you were really good because when I came in here, I was really anxious and I didn't know if you would get this. And this is what you said to me. And this really helped. Anytime you help someone, you are educating them as to what they're doing right. So giving them praise, heaping praise on them, encouraging them, because when things are right, like I said earlier about Talia, it's life-changing, it's life-saving, not just life-changing, it's life-saving.
Jason says, does it matter where on the spectrum you are, i.e. Asperger's? I'm not sure what you think on this, Carrie, but I think, no, it doesn't really matter where you are on the spectrum, whether you're autism, you've got Asperger, you're high functioning, you're low functioning. And like what Carrie said earlier, everybody with autism or Asperger is unique in their own way.
Yeah, and you have something to offer. You have
Yes.
something to offer the world that nobody else can offer. That is what you are offering. So Asperger's or no Asperger's, you have something unique about you that is absolutely going to change the world or someone around you. And that is really worth just valuing. That we live in a value system, and it's quite interesting during lockdown how we're all reassessing out what we value. But if we're people that have always valued relationships or valued people or valued those inner qualities, those inside stuff, that stuff really pays off right now, because that's the stuff that really counts. I don't care whether you're rich or poor. What I care about is who are you? What's your character? So wherever you are with your Asperger's, whether you think you're super high functioning or wherever, you've got something to offer, and that's the bit that counts.
Thanks, Carrie. We've had a question from Connor. He says, my son had anxiety due to my cancer. Sorry about your cancer diagnosis, Connor, but school just didn't understand.
I don't know what it is with schools. Some are great, aren't they? And some just don't get it. And it's the big question is, how do we help? You know, and when you're in the middle of a cancer journey and you've got a child with extreme anxiety, the last thing you want to be doing is educating someone to understand you. You want them to understand you at that point, which is why we need advocates, which is why we need more training, which is why we need more awareness. I know people get, why are we still having to do autism awareness? Because actually, maybe our community gets it. The outside world is still light years behind us. Light years.
Definitely.
That's why when you see something about autism and you see people trying to say something on Twitter, encourage it. Try to encourage those of us, and there are thousands of us, millions of us trying to make a difference. Encourage it, because it may not be for you. It may be for those people that don't yet get it. Let's try and keep reaching out to those people, because when they get it, the world's going to be an easier place to live in.
Definitely. Justine says, I found an amazing school for my daughter. They have autism within the unit of the mainstream school. All staff are trained within the unit, and my daughter is so well supported. And that just really makes me smile, that does. And she's able to attend mainstream school lessons, and I was Friday.
This is where we need to not work in silos, because we need to know what's happening in Justine's daughter's school. We need to know, because clearly it works for Justine's daughter. If it works for her, it probably works for a number of other people, not all people, but a number of other people. And it's that best practice that we need to be sharing, so that all schools have some kind of hub or unit in there, so that children that are struggling can go to a different place and have the extra bit of help that they need. Fantastic. When it works, it's a bit like the Hollyoaks thing. Wow, isn't it great? You just want to shout it from the rooftops.
Joe says, thanks, Kevin, for these live feeds. They're amazing. So, you're welcome. No problem at all.
You are amazing, Kevin. Big
props. Oh no, I'm just me at the end of the day, Carrie. Just me.
Yeah, you're just you, and it's you who we love.
Thank you, Carrie. It's been such a pleasure to have you on my show. Thank you so much. You've been on for over an hour and 20, and I'm sorry I've taken up so much of your time.
Respite care.
Respite care. But thank you so much. I really thoroughly enjoyed the chat. It doesn't even feel like an hour and 20 minutes. It just feels like about 10 minutes. It's been lovely to talk to you, Carrie. Thank you. Can I just say to you, Carrie, thank you for sharing, a wealth of information as a parent. You've what I've seen as a parent, you've built up so much information. I suppose you're like an encyclopedia of information, because you've had to, I suppose, I'm just looking from outside the box here. What I've seen, this discussion we've just had in an hour and 20 minutes, you've had to, if I'm using the right words correctly, fight for everything to get what your daughters need, the struggles. And I want to thank you as well to sharing, the raw emotion of, you sharing the story of your daughter on suicide watch, because, for any parent, that must be so hard to explain, to, members of the public, people on social media, that you've had to go through that. So I just want to say from me, thank you for sharing that, because that, that is so, I think it's so important, because sometimes people don't hear the side of the story.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for listening. And I love what you're doing, Kevin. And thank you so much if you're tuning in or watching later. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, Carrie, and thanks for coming on. Bye. 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 Thanks.